So I want you guys to realize what has just happened recently. Trump has done exactly what I had already told plenty people he was going to do. And I guess people don't believe you when you say things because they think that you're too old and you don't know what you're talking about, or you just got a lot of fear and you're afraid. And no, it's because people who actually spend time and they read and pay attention to what is going on in real world time know these events are going to take place. It's inevitable. So this article, among many articles, it says, why has Trump given white South Africans refugee status? Now, think about that for a moment. If you want to have more people that look like you and represent your voter base, and if you want to have more people who are loyalists, and if you want to have more people who can help you run out other groups, why not bring them over here? And if you look at all of the other people that he has revoked their status, or he's made it where it's virtually impossible for any other group to come over here, all these attacks on DEI and the propaganda against black people, this anti-black, anti-woke propaganda. And you had Elon politicizing his car, and he's from South Africa. And here you got a group claiming allegedly that they had been mistreated and treated racially in a negative way in a country that primarily is a black South African country. And they claim this group doesn't have any land when they come from the Netherlands. They're Dutch. And they do have a place. But what they did is, and here's what I'm going to break it down to you, is they went to a country feeling themselves. If y'all know what that means, they figured, well, we run this here and we can take over. And that's pretty much like how we've seen Trump do. He wanted to change the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, Greenland to red, white, and blue land, like I had said. And he wanted to take over Canada and call it the 51st state. And now you got some people thinking maybe money-wise, maybe. But I think those are really not good ideas, because see, what Trump is trying to do is he's trying to reface America and reface the world, basically, as much as possible on this side of the hemisphere. That is what he figures he can control. You've heard him float the rumors about doing a third term, and then there's some other issues, with housing. We have the homeless crisis, we have a recession that might be looming, and these tariffs on all these other countries. And they came to the negotiating table recently, and I think China is at 10%, in terms of, going a little down on their tariffs, but they're not really completely backing down. And then we're at maybe 47%, something like that, And so he's hoping that he can get them to negotiate. But, if you look at all the vitriol that he spewed about China, that's probably explains a whole lot why they only just went down 10%. Think about it. You're in an African country, and the majority of people are black Africans, and you come over there and you want to take land and property and you want to call it your own. You make a whole town that basically looks down on the people that really were there before you. I mean, who's the racist? So you gotta be careful about this group here, because they're definitely different than the white people that are already here. We got white people we know that are, some of them harbor a negative attitude and they're racist and they weren't held accountable for a lot of things that they've done. But this group here is a lot different. I believe, and I know this is going to sound dark, but this group, they don't mind hurting black people. They don't mind killing black people because they did it in South Africa and they brought them over here because this group is a little bit more aggressive in terms of white folks. So, like they're trying to bring back Jim Crow and they're trying to roll back the clock. Well, if you can't get these white people to be aggressive, this group definitely will be. So I'm just going to leave that with you right there. So here it says, why has Trump given white South Africans refugee status? And so that's a question that's lingering after he revoked all of the status from everyone else. He stirs up controversy by calling Afrikaners a minority group because he's feeling that the whites here in America are minorities among all of the browning of America, and so he wants to try to change that. Of course, he says there's a minority group that descended from Dutch colonists, victims, he calls them, of a genocide in South Africa. And let me tell you why. Before I begin, this group, you heard what he said, they're descendants of Dutch colonists. They came to a place that wasn't their own and they tried to colonize it, and it didn't work because them black African over there said, we are not going to put up with your mess, and so they fought back, and so they don't like it and they're calling them racist when really the racists are the ones they just brought over here. So let's be clear on that. So you see them coming over here with their bags and all this stuff. People from the first group, listen to that. They're the first group. So there's more they want to bring over here. On Monday, 59 white South Africans, they arrived. Okay? They arrived in the U.S. as part of a refugee program set up by President none other than Donald J. Trump to offer sanctuary for this group from what Washington has described a racial discrimination against Afrikaners. Listen to how that sounds, okay? Earlier this year, the Trump administration offered to resettle Afrikaners, descendants of European colonial settlers in South Africa, stating that they had been faced with harsh harassment, is what he wants to call it, and violence in their country. Let me read that back. Stating they faced harassment and violence in their country. Their country. South Africa. The Dutch colonists coming over to South Africa calling it their country. Think about this now. They were faced with harassment and violence. At the same time, he froze aid to the African nation. Think about it. The USA aid, that's why he got rid of it. That's why he wants to get rid of it. He's trying to starve African countries because they supposedly are racist, because the white people that came to settle over there, that's Dutch, they were treated bad. So, there's other articles. Alright. Afrikaners landing in the U.S. refugee status is deeply offensive. Trump administration welcomes 59 white South African refugees to the U.S. and from South Africa to the U.S. White victimhood knows no borders. Kill the Boer. Anti-apartheid song must ties to white genocide. Those are some other articles you can check out in your leisure. So as the group had arrived, Dulles International Airport near Washington, D.C., U.S. Deputy Secretary of the State Christopher Landau told them, "I want you all to know that you are really welcome here and that we respect what you have had to deal with these last few years. So we respect the long tradition of your people and what you have accomplished over the years." So how is Washington justifying special treatment to African refugees? In the news conference on Monday, Trump doubled down on the claims that white people have been subjected to systemic violence since the end of apartheid or white minority rule in South Africa. So the Afrikaner community are descendants mainly from Dutch settlers who established apartheid in 1948. Under apartheid, whites could seize land. Listen to this now. They could seize land. This is what this fight was over, land. They wanted to take the black South Africans' land. They wanted to colonize. So they figured because they settled, they could seize the land. So let's question, who are the real racists here? Seize not only the land but the resources from black populations who were relegated to the Bantustans, or overcrowded townships, as they say. Although apartheid had ended in 1994 when the African National Congress won the first racially inclusive democratic election in South Africa, most commenters agreed that the racism persists today. Even today, it's still going on, with many black people still disproportionately lacking access to land, resources, and opportunity. People, if you don't look at what is really going on, he brought these people over here so they could run us out of here. That is the truth, and I'm just going to be real with it. Okay? There's no sugarcoating it. So, in January, President Cyril Ramaphosa introduced a new law seeking to address land ownership disparities, which have left 3/4 of the privately owned land in South Africa in the hands of the white minority. By making it easier for the state to expropriate land, Ramaphosa has insisted that the law does not amount to land confiscation, okay, but creates a framework for fair redistribution by allowing authorities to take land in public interest without compensation only in exceptional circumstances, like when the area is abandoned, okay? Shortly after the introduction of the Expropriation Act, Trump wrote on the Truth Social account, "South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly, and the U.S. won't stand for it. We will act." Okay? Washington has said it agreed to grant Afrikaners refugee status after the introduction of the law. Trump is also at odds with African nations, prominent positions in the International Court of Justice case accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza. Okay? This is where all this is coming from. So is there a genocide risk against white South Africans? It's a genocide that's taking place, Trump told reporters at a White House, I guess it was a conference or a meeting, he claimed, that has drawn criticism from South African officials abroad and the international media as well. So Trump's claim echoes white nationalist beliefs that South Africa's legislation aimed at recertifying apartheid is now, in fact, discriminatory against the Afrikaner community, which is the white South Africans, which formerly were Dutch. Elon Musk, South African born tech billionaire and a close ally of Trump, is perceived by many as an ally of the Afrikaner cause. He has repeatedly posted his outrage on his X site, formerly known as Twitter, against what he claims is unfair treatment of white South Africans, even going as far as claiming that there's a white genocide occurring. So still, South African whites own most of the country's private land and have about 20 times more wealth than the blacks on average there. Let me read that again. Still, South African whites, they own most of the country's private land and have about 20 times more wealth than blacks on average. In corporate South Africa, white individuals occupy 62% of the top management positions, while 17% of the leadership roles are held by black managers. And even statistics have provided that AfriForum and the Transvaal Agriculture Union, also a group sympathetic to white farmers, show that the total number of farmers across all races killed every year numbers about 60. This is a country that sees 19,000 murders in all annually. So some younger Afrikaners have taken to social media to mock the asylum offer, posting parody videos that highlight the privileges of white people that they enjoy in South Africa today. Basically, you have white people that are here that know about the history of the country, know that this is a crock-a-doodie. In so many words, they know that this is just Trump's other move in front to try to colonize the people over here. That's all it is. So has South Africa reacted? In March, South African government called Trump's claims of the Afrikaners face persecution completely false, which it is, and I agree with that statement, noting that they have remained among the richest, the most economically privileged groups, even in that country. They basically colonized a black country, just like what we've seen them do all throughout history. And now they want to come over here because Trump brought them over here. But whose TP status did they revoke? Whose visas did they recently revoke? Think about it. On Monday, President Ramaphosa told the Africa CEO Forum in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, that we think that the African government has got it the wrong end of the stick here, but we'll continue talking to them. So Ramaphosa said that he had spoken to Trump about the issue. So South African president said that the far-right Afrikaners, because they're far-right, think about it, that's another thing. He likes bringing those type of people because they're his new voter base. They're seeking refuge status, where a fringe group adding that they are anti-transformation and anti-change, would actually prefer South Africa to go back to apartheid-type policies. I said to him, Trump, that I would never do that. So basically they wanted it to where the black South Africans, like how they're struggling and don't have resources and don't have land, and they have to bow down to the white South Afrikaners. So Ramaphosa also revealed that he is set to meet Trump soon regarding this issue. So what's the status of the U.S.-South Africa relations? What is it? Tensions between Trump administration and the government of South Africa are high right now, with the U.S. expelling South Africa's ambassador in March due to criticism of Trump. Trump's administration is also at odds with Pretoria's prominent position in the International Court of Justice case against Israel, which stands accused of genocide in Gaza. Another major flashpoint was the abrupt pause of the U.S. funding, which is the U.S. aid, in January, and the dismantling of that U.S. aid operations in South Africa. So this particularly affected the PEPFAR program, President's emergency plan, and guess what it was for? AIDS relief. And I mentioned that in another video, that he even wanted to stop the advancements that they had. They were getting close to a cure. He stopped that because he knows that people who are low income here that are affected by AIDS need that medicine. But if they don't get close to a cure and they stop the grants for the funding of research for that, it's going to hurt a lot of people here too. You guys better start looking at what's going on. This man is going to hurt a lot of folks. If he hadn't already, you about to see something. In 2023 alone, South Africa received roughly 460 million in PEPFAR funds, covering nearly 18% of the country's total HIV and AIDS budget. The funding had froze, is jeopardizing efforts to combat the world's most severe HIV epidemics. And you know why he froze it? Because it's black people that's suffering with it, and he don't care if they drop. And I'm going to just be straight with you. Trade diplomacy has not escaped the fallout either. With a proposed 30% tariff rate, South Africa was among the hardest hit by Trump's Liberation Day tariffs on April the 2nd, which disproportionately affected African nations. And we know why. Only 5 other countries faced steeper trade hikes than South Africa, and we know one of them was China. Although a 90-day pause was put on it to grant it before the tariffs implementation, the looming threat of higher trade levies, especially on car exports, has created deep anxiety in Pretoria. So is this consistent with U.S. refugee law and policy? Yesterday, arrival of dozens of Afrikaners in the U.S. comes as Trump administration blocks nearly all the refugee admissions and leans into rhetoric about an invasion of immigrants from poor nations. But not this group, not this Dutch white group. No, they're not invading. They're not taking over. They're allies. They love Trump. But all the rest, he just revoked all of their status, taking people that even were born here in America and trying to send them somewhere, to places they don't even know. Speaking from Washington, D.C., Al Jazeera correspondent Patty Culhane said that the Trump administration has made a priority of getting these people, the white South Afrikaners, into the U.S. So meanwhile, people fleeing widespread violence and persecution in countries such as Haiti and Afghanistan face a closed door. Slammed right in your face. Boom. Get out. But look whose door he opened. That's pretty much the article. I just want you guys to see the hypocrisy in all of this. These people that voted for this man, you can clearly see. If you can't see anything else, I don't know what you can see, but this will tell you what we're dealing with here. Then, when you want to take some time upon yourself to see how these people treated the South African people in the country, you'll see what goes on. Those people, the reason why they resorted to violence is because they were met with violence. They didn't just raise up and start becoming violent. They had to become violent because they were met with violence with this group of folks. And that's who they just brought over here to the U.S. So these white people that, we're talking about police shootings, all these little atrocities and things like that ain't nothing compared to what these people would do.